The stars looked different through the viewport of the USS Horizon. Jack Morrison stood there, watching the distant lights of Kepler Station grow larger as they approached. His weathered hands gripped the metal railing, and the scars on his knuckles told stories of battles fought long ago. At 53, he had seen more war than most soldiers and more peace than most diplomats. "Ambassador Morrison will be docking in 30 minutes, Captain Lisa Hayes said as she walked up behind him. She had worked with Jack for 5 years now, and she knew that look on his face. It was the same expression he wore before every impossible. "Mission. Thank you, Lisa," Jack replied without turning around. "Any word from the council?" "They're still debating surrender. The Zephyrians want an answer in 6 hours. Lisa moved to stand beside him at the viewport. "Jack, you know what you're asking for is crazy, right? No one has ever talked to War Prince Krelinth and lived to tell about it." Jack finally turned to face her. His gray eyes held a calmness that had helped him end 3 civil wars. "Sometimes crazy is the only thing that works." Commander Ben Parker entered the observation deck, his military uniform crisp and his expression serious. "Ambassador, I've been monitoring Zephyrian communications. Their fleet is massive. 200 ships, all armed with planet-cracking weapons. Our entire defense force couldn't stop them." "Numbers don't always tell the whole story, Ben," Jack said quietly. "I've seen small groups of determined people change the course of history." Ben shook his head. "Sir, with respect, this isn't about determination. The Zephyrians don't negotiate, they conquer. They've destroyed 17 civilizations in the past century." Jack walked over to the wall display showing the Vega sector. Red dots marked Zephyrian positions, while blue dots showed Federation forces. The red vastly outnumbered the blue. "What do you know about their culture, Ben?" "Their warriors honor through combat. The strong rule the weak." Ben crossed his arms. "Pretty straightforward." "Every culture has layers," Jack said. "Even the most warlike people have reasons for their actions, stories that shape them, fears that drive them." Captain Hayes pulled up a holographic display of the Zephyrian flagship. The ship was enormous, bristling with weapons and armor. "The Deathbringer, Krelinth's personal command ship. It's twice the size of our biggest vessel." "Impressive," Jack said, studying the image. "But I'm not planning to fight it." The communication system chimed, and a voice filled the room. "USS Horizon, this is Kepler Station Control. You are cleared for Docking Bay 7. Please be advised that Zephyrian vessels are approaching the station." Through the viewport, they could see the massive alien ships emerging from hyperspace. Each one was a work of dark art designed to inspire fear in enemies. The Deathbringer led the formation, its hull scarred from countless battles. "There they are," Lisa whispered. "The most feared military force in the galaxy." Jack watched the ships approach with professional interest. They're beautiful in their own way, efficient, purposeful. He turned to Ben. "What's our intelligence on Krelinth personally?" Ben activated his tablet. "Age unknown, but estimated over 200 years old. He's led the Zephyrian military for 6 decades, never lost a major battle, never negotiated with what he calls lesser species." "What about his background? Family, personal history?" "The Zephyrians don't share personal information about their leaders. We know he rose through the ranks by combat prowess. He's killed over 1,000 enemies in personal combat." Jack nodded slowly. A warrior's warrior. "But what made him that way?" The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the station's docking bay. Through the speakers, they heard the mechanical sounds of docking clamps engaging. The USS Horizon was home now, at least temporarily. "Ambassador," Lisa said, "I need to ask you something. What makes you think you can reach someone like Krelinth? What's your plan?" Jack smiled for the first time since they'd left Earth. "I'm going to tell him a story." Ben looked confused. "A story? Every person, human or alien, has experiences that shaped them, pain they've felt, choices they've made. If I can find Crown, maybe I can help him see a different path." "But what if you're wrong?" Lisa asked. "What if he just kills you?" "Then at least we'll have tried something other than surrender." Jack picked up his diplomatic case. Spent my life believing that every conflict has a solution. Sometimes you just have to be willing to look for it in unexpected places. They left the observation deck and headed for the docking bay. The corridors of the USS Horizon were busy with crew members preparing for what might be their last mission. Many of them nodded respectfully as Jack passed. His reputation preceded him wherever he went. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez met them at the airlock. She was Jack's aide and had been with him through his most dangerous assignments. "Sir, the Federation Council is asking for an update on your progress." "Tell them I'm about to make first contact with the Zephyrian leadership," Jack replied. "And Amy, make sure you record everything. If this goes badly, someone needs to learn from our mistakes." "It won't go badly," Amy said with more confidence than she felt. "You've never failed before. There's always a first time." Jack checked his appearance in the reflection of the airlock door. He wore a simple black suit, no medals or military decorations. "How do I look?" "Like a man about to make history," Lisa said. The airlock opened, and they stepped onto Kepler Station. The station was a marvel of engineering, built by a dozen different species working together. But today it felt more like a battlefield than a symbol of cooperation. The main corridor was filled with diplomats, military officers, and reporters from across the galaxy. Everyone was talking in hushed tones about the Zephyrian ultimatum. Many species had already begun evacuating their border worlds. Ambassador Morrison, a reporter from the Centauri News Network, pushed through the crowd. "Is it true that humanity plans to negotiate with the Zephyrians?" Jack stopped and faced the reporter. "We plan to try every option before accepting war as inevitable. But the Zephyrians have never shown mercy to any species they've conquered," the reporter pressed. "What makes you think they'll listen to you?" "Because," Jack said calmly, "everyone deserves a chance to choose a better path, even our enemies." They continued through the station toward the diplomatic quarters. The crowds grew thicker as they approached the central council chamber. Through the transparent walls, they could see alien delegates arguing passionately about the crisis. "The Altarians are already pulling their fleets back to defend their homeworld," Amy reported, reading from her tablet. "The Regelians are asking for emergency Federation protection. 3 species have formally requested permission to surrender to the Zephyrians." "Fear makes people do desperate things," Jack observed, "but so does hope." They reached the diplomatic wing, where Jack's quarters had been prepared. The rooms were simple but comfortable, with a view of the docking bays where both Federation and Zephyrian ships sat in tense proximity. "Sir," Amy said, "President Carter is waiting for your call." Jack activated the secure communication system. The holographic image of Earth's president appeared, her face showing the strain of the crisis. "Jack, the Joint Chiefs are breathing down my neck. They want to know if you have any realistic chance of success. Helen, I won't lie to you. This is the longest shot I've ever taken. But the alternative is a war that could destroy both our civilizations." "The public is scared, Jack. They're seeing the news reports about Zephyrian fleet movements. Some are calling for preemptive strikes. Give me time. If I can't reach Kralinth, we'll face the consequences together. But let me try first." President Carter was quiet for a moment. "You have my full support, Jack, but if this goes wrong, you're on your own. I can't let Earth pay the price for one man's gamble." "Understood, Madam President." The connection ended, and Jack sat down in his chair. Through the window, he could see the Zephyrian ships. Somewhere on one of those vessels was War Prince Kralinth, a being who had never known defeat and had never shown mercy. "Amy, send a message to the Zephyrian command ship. Tell them that Ambassador Morrison requests a personal meeting with War Prince Kralinth to discuss terms." "Sir, what if they refuse?" "Then we'll have to find another way to get his attention." Jack stood up and walked to the window. "But something tells me he's as curious about us as we are about him. After all, we're the first species that's ever asked to talk instead of fight." Amy sent the message, and they waited. Minutes passed, like hours. The entire station seemed to hold its breath. Finally, the response came back. Amy's eyes widened as she read it. "Sir, they've agreed to a meeting. Tomorrow at noon in the neutral zone conference room. Jack nodded slowly. Then we'd better get ready. Tomorrow we find out if words can be stronger than weapons. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware that the fate of countless worlds might depend on a single conversation between two very different beings. But Jack Morrison had built his career on the belief that every problem had a solution, and every enemy had the potential to become an ally. The real test would begin tomorrow. The neutral zone conference room on Kepler Station had been designed for exactly this type of meeting. The circular chamber could accommodate beings from different worlds, with adjustable gravity, atmosphere, and lighting. But as Jack Morrison entered the room, he knew that no amount of engineering could prepare him for what was about to happen. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez walked beside him, carrying a tablet with detailed intelligence reports about Zephyrian culture. She had spent the entire night studying their customs, their language, their history of conquest. Sir, remember that direct eye contact is considered a challenge among Zephyrians. And whatever you do, don't show your back to him. Jack nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He had spent his own sleepless night thinking about the conversation ahead. Not about tactics or negotiation strategies, but about the person he was about to meet. War Prince Kralenth was more than just a military leader. He was a being who had lived for over 2 centuries, who had seen entire civilizations rise and fall. "Are you ready for this?" Amy asked as they reached the entrance. "No," Jack said honestly, "but I don't think anyone could be ready for this." The doors slid open and they stepped into the chamber. The room was larger than Jack had expected, with a curved ceiling that showed the stars beyond the station. In the center sat a simple round table, surrounded by chairs that could be adjusted for different body types. They were early, which was intentional. Jack wanted to choose his seat carefully and have time to prepare mentally. He selected a chair that faced the main entrance, positioned so that he could see Kralenth's face clearly when he arrived. "The Federation Council is watching this meeting through the security cameras," Amy said quietly. "So are the leaders of 12 different worlds." "No pressure," Jack replied with a slight smile. "Amy, I want you to record everything, but don't take notes during the meeting. I need Kralenth to see that I'm focused entirely on him." 20 minutes before the scheduled time, the doors opened again. Jack felt his heart rate increase as he saw the first Zephyrian guard enter. The being was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with dark chitinous armor that seemed to absorb light. Energy weapons crackled along his arms. More guards followed, each one identical in their intimidating presence. They spread out around the room, creating a defensive perimeter. Jack counted 12 of them, all armed, all watching him with eyes that showed no emotion. Then War Prince Kralenth entered, and Jack understood why entire civilizations had surrendered rather than face him in battle. The Zephyrian leader was enormous, even by the standards of his species. His armor was different from his guards, more ornate but also more battle-scarred. Each mark told a story of victory over some enemy. Kralenth's face was difficult to read. His features were sharp and angular, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator. This was a being who had never known defeat, who had shaped his entire existence around the concept of strength through conquest. That behind him came a smaller Zephyrian, carrying what appeared to be recording equipment. This would be his aide, though Jack knew better than to assume the being was anything less than dangerous. Kralenth stopped in front of the table and studied Jack for a long moment. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of history. Finally, the War Prince spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "You are the human who wishes to speak with me." "I am Ambassador Jack Morrison," Jack replied, standing slowly. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "I agreed because I am curious. In 2 centuries of conquest, no species has ever asked to speak with me before demanding terms of surrender." Kralenth moved to the chair across from Jack and sat down. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Jack said, sitting back down. "But I believe there's always value in conversation between intelligent beings." Kralenth's aide activated the recording device and took a position behind his leader. The war prince leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving Jack's face. Speak then, human. Tell me why I should not simply order my fleet to attack your worlds. Jack had prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, he found himself changing his approach. Instead of the formal diplomatic speech he had planned, he decided to do something that had never been tried with a Zephyrian leader. He decided to be completely honest. Because war is easy, Jack said simply. Any species can destroy. It takes no creativity, no intelligence, no growth. You've conquered 17 civilizations, but what have you learned from them? What have they taught you about the universe that you didn't already know? The question seemed to surprise Kraylanth. His head tilted slightly, a gesture that his aide mimicked. We learned that they were weak. That strength is the only truth in the universe. Did you? Jack asked. Or did you simply confirm what you already believed? For several seconds, neither being spoke. Jack could hear the quiet hum of the station's life support systems and the distant sounds of ships docking. The weight of billions of lives hung in the balance of this conversation. You speak strangely for a diplomat, Kraylanth said finally. Where are your offers of tribute? Your promises of submission? I don't have any, Jack replied. I'm not here to surrender to you. I'm here to talk with you. About what? Jack leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed despite the armed guards surrounding him. About choice. About the difference between strength and power. About what it means to be remembered. I am remembered on every world I have conquered. My name is spoken in fear across the galaxy. Fear fades, Jack said quietly, but some things last forever. Let me tell you about a man I knew. His name was Captain Robert Stone. He was a soldier in humanity's civil war, fighting against rebels who wanted to overthrow our government. Kraylanth's expression didn't change, but Jack noticed that he didn't interrupt. The war prince was listening. Stone had the opportunity to use chemical weapons against a rebel city. The weapons would have ended the war immediately and saved thousands of military lives. But the city was full of civilians, including children. Stone refused the order. Then he was weak, Kraylanth said, but there was something different in his tone. Was he? The war continued for 2 more years? Stone himself was killed in battle 6 months later. But his decision to protect those civilians changed something in both armies. Soldiers on both sides began to question whether victory was worth any price. Jack paused, watching Kraylanth's face for any reaction. The war ended not with conquest, but with negotiation. The rebels and the government found a way to coexist. Stone never lived to see it, but his choice to protect the innocent made peace possible. A pleasant story, Kraylanth said, but his voice lacked conviction. But irrelevant. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the law of the universe, is it? Jack asked. You've lived for over 2 centuries. You've conquered worlds, defeated armies, built an empire. But tell me, War Prince, what brings you joy? The question was so unexpected that Kraylanth actually pulled back slightly. Joy? Happiness, satisfaction, the feeling that your life has meaning beyond simply existing. Jack leaned forward. When you look at your empire, when you see the fear in the eyes of conquered peoples, does it make you feel fulfilled? For the first time in the conversation, Kraylanth hesitated. His aide shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to seeing his leader uncertain about anything. Fulfillment is a luxury for the weak, Kraylanth said finally. The strong do what must be done. But who decided what must be done? Jack asked. Who told you that conquest was the only path? Who convinced you that strength could only be measured in the number of enemies you've defeated? My father, Kraylanth said, and then looked surprised that he had answered so quickly. Tell me about him. Why would you want to know about Zephyrian? History? Because I want to understand you. You're not just a military leader. You're a person who has lived a long life and made countless decisions. Some of those decisions brought you to this moment, facing a choice between war and something else. Kraylanth was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. My father was war prince before me. He died in battle when I was young, fighting against a rebellion on one of our conquered worlds. His last words to me were that strength was the only truth, and that any sign of weakness would destroy our people. He was trying to protect you, Jack said, and your people. But that was his understanding of protection. Maybe there are other ways. Such as? What if strength meant protecting the innocent instead of conquering them? What if power meant lifting others up instead of keeping them down? What if the measure of a leader wasn't how many enemies he defeated, but how many lives he saved? Kralenth stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His guards immediately tensed, hands moving to their weapons. You speak of things that would make us weak, vulnerable. Do they? Jack remained seated, his voice calm. Humans fought each other for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed our own planet multiple times. But we didn't become strong by conquering our neighbors. We became strong by learning to work together, by protecting each other. And now you are part of the Federation, Kralenth said. Still weak, still dependent on others. Are we? Your empire wants the Vega sector. We could give it to you and avoid this war entirely. News of the first meeting spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On Earth, President Helen Carter watched the recorded session with her military advisors, while on distant worlds, alien leaders tried to understand what the human ambassador was attempting to do. Some called it brave, others called it foolish, but everyone agreed that nothing like this had ever happened before. Jack Morrison spent the night walking through the corridors of Kepler Station, unable to sleep. The meeting with Kralenth had gone better than he hoped, but he knew the real test was still coming. Through the station's windows, he could see the Zephyrian fleet hanging in space like dark thunderclouds. One wrong word in tomorrow's meeting could turn those ships into instruments of destruction. Sir? Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez found him in the observation lounge at 3 a.m. You should get some rest. Can't sleep, Jack replied, staring out at the stars. Keep thinking about what Kralenth said about his father. There's something there, Amy. Something that might be the key to all of this. What do you mean? Jack turned away from the window and sat down across from her. Every choice we make is influenced by the people who came before us. Kralenth's father died fighting rebels on a conquered world. His last words were about strength being the only truth. That's been driving the war prince for 2 centuries. But how does that help? US? Maybe it doesn't. Or maybe it shows us that even the most warlike people are shaped by loss and fear. Jack rubbed his tired eyes. I need to know more about that rebellion, the one where his father died. Amy activated her tablet and began searching through historical records. There's not much information about internal Zephyrian conflicts, but I found something interesting. About 150 years ago, there was a major uprising on a world called Nexer Prime. The rebels were led by a Zephyrian named Veltar, who believed their empire should protect conquered peoples instead of enslaving them. What happened to him? Killed in the final battle, along with most of his followers. The rebellion lasted 3 years before it was crushed. Amy looked up from her tablet. Sir, what if Kralenth's father wasn't just fighting rebels? What if he was fighting his own people who wanted to change their society? Jack felt a spark of understanding. And what if some part of Kralenth has always wondered if those rebels were right? The next morning arrived with urgent news. Commander. Ben Parker found Jack in his quarters, his face grim with worry. Ambassador, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting Zephyrian battle groups moving into position around 3 Federation worlds. It looks like they're preparing for simultaneous attacks. Hardliners in the Zephyrian military, Jack said immediately. They don't like Kralenth talking to us. There's more. Intelligence reports suggest that a Zephyrian general named Thaxmer is leading the movement. He's calling Kralenth weak for negotiating with humans. Jack stood up and began pacing. This was exactly what he had feared. How much time do we have? Unknown. But if those battle groups attack, it won't matter what Kralenth decides. The war will start whether he wants it or not. Then we need to change the game entirely. Jack stopped pacing and looked at Ben. Get me a secure channel to Captain Lisa Hayes on the horizon. And Amy, I need you to prepare a very specific request for the Federation Council." 20 minutes later, Jack was back in the neutral zone conference room, but this time he wasn't alone. Captain Hayes stood beside him, along with 3 other human officers. On the table in front of them was a single data pad containing information. That could change everything got when Kraylinth entered with his usual guard formation. Jack could see the tension in the War Prince's movements. The Zephyrian leader's aide whispered something in his ear, and Kraylinth's expression darkened. "Ambassador Morrison," Kraylinth said as he took his seat, "I assume you are aware of the fleet movements?" "I am, and I assume you're aware that some of your own commanders are questioning your authority. General Thaxmer believes I have grown weak. He thinks negotiating with humans is beneath the dignity of our empire." Kraylinth's voice carried a note of anger. "He may be right. Or maybe he's afraid," Jack said quietly. "Afraid that if you find another way, it will prove that his entire life has been built on a lie." "And what if it has? What if everything my people have believed for 1,000 years is wrong?" Kraylinth leaned forward. "You ask me to abandon conquest, but conquest is what made us strong. Without it, we would still be a primitive species, fighting over scraps on our homeworld." Jack activated the datapad. A holographic image appeared above the table, showing a star system with several planets. "This is the Altair system. 50 years ago, it was home to a species called the Altarians. They were peaceful, advanced in science and art. They had never fought a war in their entire history. I remember them. We conquered their worlds in less than a month. They surrendered without firing a shot. What happened to them after the conquest?" Kraylinth was quiet for a moment. They were relocated to labor camps. Their cities were converted for Zephyrian use. Some were kept as servants. How many survived? I do not know the exact numbers. Jack changed the holographic display, showing population statistics. According to our records, the Altarian population went from 8 billion to less than 50,000 in 20 years. They're essentially extinct as a species. The weak do not survive conquest. This is the natural order. Is it, or is it waste? Jack stood up and walked around the table. The Altarians had developed medical technology that could have extended lifespans for all species. They had art forms that could have enriched the entire galaxy. They had philosophical concepts about peace that could have prevented countless wars. None of that matters if they could not defend themselves. But what if they could have defended you? Jack asked. What if their knowledge could have made your people stronger, healthier, happier? Instead of enslaving them, what if you had made them partners? Partners? Kraylinth seemed genuinely confused by the concept. The strong do not partner with the weak. Jack activated another file on the datapad. Let me tell you about Sergeant Danny Williams. He was a human soldier serving on the border between Federation and Zephyrian space. 5 years ago, his patrol encountered a group of Zephyrian civilians whose transport ship had broken down in an asteroid field. Civilians do not travel in disputed territory. These were refugees fleeing from a mining accident on one of your outer colonies. Women and children, mostly. Their ship was damaged and they were running out of life support. Kraylinth's aide leaned forward, clearly interested despite himself. Williams had orders to report any Zephyrian presence immediately. Instead, he helped repair their ship and gave them supplies from his own vessel. When raiders attacked the refugee ship 2 days later, Williams and his squad fought to protect them. What happened? Williams was killed defending people who were supposed to be his enemies. But he saved 43 Zephyrian civilians, including 12 children. The room was completely silent. Even the Zephyrian guards seemed to be listening. When the refugees finally reached safety, they told their story to anyone who would listen. Word spread through the outer colonies about the human soldier who died protecting Zephyrian families. Some of your own people began to question whether all humans were truly enemies. Kraylinth stood up abruptly. You are trying to manipulate me with stories. I'm trying to show you that there are different kinds of strength. Williams couldn't conquer worlds or command fleets. But his choice to protect innocent lives changed the way people thought about the conflict between our species. One soldiers. Actions do not change the nature of war, don't they? After William's death, attacks on civilian ships in that sector dropped by 60%. Zephyrian and Federation patrols began cooperating to hunt down the raiders who threatened everyone. Small changes, but real ones. Jack returned to his seat and looked directly at Kraylanth. You asked me yesterday how I wanted to be remembered. But let me ask you something else. How do you want your people to be remembered? As conquerors who destroyed everything beautiful in the galaxy, or as protectors who helped it flourish? My people are warriors, it is what we are. We're the Altarians. Artists because that's what they were, or because that's what they chose to be? Jack asked. You've spent your life believing that strength comes from conquest. But what if you're wrong? What if real strength comes from the choice to protect instead of destroy? You are asking me to betray everything my father taught me. I'm asking you to honor what he was really trying to teach you. He wanted your people to be strong. But maybe there are ways to be strong that he never imagined. Kraylanth walked to the window again, his movements agitated. Even if I believed you, it may be too late. Thaxmer fleets are already in position? My own commanders are questioning my orders. Then come with me. What? Jack stood up and faced the war prince. Come with me to meet Thaxmer, face to face. Let me show him what I've shown you. That is impossible. Thaxmer would kill you on sight. Maybe, but if there's even a chance that words can prevent this war, isn't it worth trying? Kraylanth turned away from the window. You would risk your life to speak with my rebellious general? I would risk my life to save both our civilizations from destroying each other. The journey to the Zephyrian cruiser Shadowblade took Jack Morrison deeper into enemy space than any human had ever traveled. He sat in the passenger compartment of Kraylanth's personal transport, watching alien stars streak past through the viewport. The war prince sat across from him, silent and tense, while his aide monitored communications from the Zephyrian fleet. General Thaxmer's ships have surrounded 3 Federation colonies, the aide reported. He is demanding immediate surrender. Or he will begin orbital bombardment. Kraylanth's fists clenched. He moves too quickly. This was supposed to be a show of force, not an act of war. Can you stop him? Jack asked. Perhaps. If I can reach him before he acts. Kraylanth looked at Jack with what might have been concern. Ambassador, you should know that Thaxmer has never respected diplomacy. He believes that talking to enemies is a sign of weakness. What was he like when you served together? We did not serve together. He served under my father during the Nexa Rebellion. Thaxmer was the one who killed the rebel leader Veltar in single combat. He has never forgotten the lessons of that war. Jack leaned forward. What lessons? That mercy is weakness. That conquered peoples will always try to corrupt their conquerors, with false ideas about peace and cooperation. Kraylanth paused. Thaxmer believes that Veltar's rebellion started because my father showed too much tolerance for conquered species. And you? What do you believe? I believed what my father told me, that strength was the only truth. Kraylanth looked out at the stars. But your stories have made me question many things. The transport shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewport, Jack could see the Shadowblade waiting for them. The cruiser was smaller than Kraylanth's flagship, but no less intimidating. Its hull was covered with weapon arrays and armor plating that had been scarred by countless battles. Once. We'd board that ship. You are completely at Thaxmer's mercy, Kraylanth warned. I can protect you to some extent, but if he decides you are a threat, he will kill you without hesitation. I understand. Do you? Thaxmer has killed over 3,000 enemies in personal combat. He has never shown mercy to anyone he considers weak. Jack nodded. Then I'll have to show him that I'm not weak. The docking process took several minutes. Jack could feel his heart beating faster as they approached the enemy ship. Through the transport sensors, he could see Zephyrian warriors moving through the corridors, preparing for what they believed would be a glorious war. Final approach, the pilot announced. General Thaxmer's honor guard is waiting in the docking bay. Jack checked his diplomatic case one more time. Inside was a single datapad containing the most important information he had ever carried. Everything depended on whether he could make Thaxmer see what Kraylenth was beginning to understand. The airlock cycled open, and they stepped onto the shadow blade. Jack's first impression was of barely controlled violence. The ship hummed with weapon systems, and the corridors echoed with the sounds of soldiers preparing for battle. Every Zephyrian they passed stared at Jack with obvious hostility. General Thaxmer waited for them in the ship's war room. He was smaller than Kraylenth, but somehow more frightening. Where the war prince carried himself with dignified authority, Thaxmer radiated pure aggression. His armor was simpler than Kraylenth's, but covered with more battle scars. His eyes burned with the intensity of someone who had never questioned his purpose. "So," Thaxmer said without preamble, "this is the human who has made our war prince forget his duty." "General Thaxmer," Jack replied with a respectful nod. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I did not agree. Kraylenth commanded it, and I still follow his orders, for now." Thaxmer walked around Jack in a slow circle, like a predator examining prey. "You are smaller than I expected, weaker. I could break your neck with one hand." "Yes, you could," Jack agreed calmly. "But that wouldn't answer the questions that brought us here." "Questions?" Thaxmer stopped in front of Jack. "There are no questions. Only strength and weakness. You are weak, therefore you will be conquered. This is the way of the universe." "Is it? Then why are you afraid to listen to what I have to say?" The war room fell completely silent. Several Zephyrian officers reached for their weapons, but Thaxmer held up a hand to stop them. His eyes narrowed dangerously. "I am not afraid of anything, human. Then prove it. Listen to me for 10 minutes. If my words have no power, what harm can they do?" Thaxmer considered this challenge. Jack could see the general's mind working, weighing his options. To refuse would suggest that he was indeed afraid of mere words. 10 minutes, Thaxmer said finally. "Then I will kill you for wasting my time." Jack opened his diplomatic case and removed the datapad. "I want to tell you about a man named Colonel Rick Hayes. He was a human military officer during our Civil War, about 60 years ago." "Another of your weakness stories? A story about choice." Hayes was given command of a weapon that could have ended the war immediately. It was called a plasma bomb, capable of destroying an entire city. The rebel capital was surrounded, full of enemy soldiers and civilians. Jack activated the datapad, showing a holographic image of a human city under siege. Hayes had clear orders: use the weapon, end the war, save thousands of military lives. "So he used it," Thaxmer said with satisfaction. "He chose strength." "No. He refused the order. He said that victory achieved through the murder of innocents was not victory at all, but defeat of the worst kind." "Then he was a fool and a traitor." Jack changed the display to show battle records. Hayes led his troops in a ground assault instead. It took 3 months to capture the city. Hayes himself was killed in the final battle, shot while trying to protect a group of civilian refugees. "Weakness," Thaxmer spat. "He died for nothing." "Did he?" The rebel leaders were so impressed by his sacrifice that they agreed to negotiate. The war ended not with conquest, but with compromise. Both sides found a way to coexist. Temporary peace. The strong always defeat the weak eventually. Jack changed the display again, showing modern Earth. That was 60 years ago. The former rebels and government forces now work together. They've built a civilization that has reached the stars and made allies across the galaxy. Hayes' choice to protect innocent lives became the foundation for everything that followed. "Pretty words," Thaxmer said. "But words do not win wars, don't they?" "Let me ask you something, General. How many rebellions have you fought?" "How many?" "Conquered peoples have risen up against Zephyrian rule?" "Dozens. It is the natural order. The weak always try to overthrow the strong. And how do those rebellions always end?" "With the death of the rebels and the strengthening of our control." Jack nodded slowly. "Yet they keep happening. Generation after generation, conquered peoples keep fighting against you. Why do you think that is? Because they refuse to accept their place in the natural order. Or because they have nothing left. To lose because living under Zephyrian rule is worse than death. Jack moved closer to Thaxmer, his voice quiet but intense. What if there was another way? What if you could be remembered not as a conqueror but as a protector? I have no interest in protecting the weak. What about protecting your own people? This question seemed to surprise Thaxmer. What do you mean? Jack changed the display to show casualty reports from recent Zephyrian campaigns. Your empire has been expanding for 1,000 years, but look at the cost. Millions of Zephyrian soldiers dead. Entire generations spent fighting wars instead of building civilization. Your people are strong, but they're dying for territory that gives them nothing but more enemies to fight. The strong must expand or they become weak, must they? Look at these numbers, General. Your military consumes 70% of your empire's resources. Your conquered worlds produce barely enough to support the fleets needed to keep them under control. You're not building an empire. You're feeding a monster that devours everything. Thaxmer studied the display, his expression unreadable. You suggest that we abandon conquest entirely. I suggest that you consider what your people could accomplish if they didn't have to spend all their energy fighting wars. Your species is naturally strong, intelligent, organized. Imagine what you could build if you used those gifts to create instead of destroy. Creation is for the weak. We are warriors. Jack pulled up another file on the datapad. This is a medical report from one of your outer colonies. A plague outbreak that killed thousands of Zephyrians because your medical technology is centuries behind what it could be. All your resources go to weapons instead of healing. The strong do not need healing. Everyone needs healing, General. Even you. Jack looked at the scars covering Thaxmer's armor. How many of those wounds could have been prevented if your people focused on protection instead of aggression? For the first time, Thaxmer seemed uncertain. You speak of things that are impossible. Our entire society is built on strength through conquest. Societies can change. Humans once believed that war was the only way to resolve conflicts. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times, but we learned. We grew, we became stronger by working together instead of fighting each other. And now you are part of the Federation. Still weak, still dependent on others, Jack smiled. Are we? Your empire wants the Vega sector. We refuse to give it up, even though it means facing your entire fleet. The Kepler-9 system had never seen anything like it. Massive Zephyrian warships, designed for conquest and destruction, approached the plague-stricken worlds carrying medical supplies instead of weapons. Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Shadowblade, watching as General Thaxmer coordinated the largest humanitarian mission in Zephyrian history. Supply ships are reporting successful delivery to Kepler-9c, a Zephyrian officer announced. The Federation medical teams are grateful for our assistance. Thaxmer said nothing, but Jack could see the general's confusion. For 1,000 years, other species had feared the sight of Zephyrian ships. Now they were greeting them with relief and gratitude. General, another officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. A group of refugees wants to thank us personally. Put it on screen, Thaxmer ordered. The main display showed a mixed group of beings from different species. They were clearly sick, some barely able to stand, but their expressions were filled with hope. A young human woman spoke for the group. 2. The Zephyrian fleet, we cannot express how grateful we are for your help. Our children were dying and you brought us medicine. Our elderly were suffering and you brought us food. We will never forget this kindness. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jack watched Thaxmer's face, seeing emotions the general had probably never experienced before. The hardened warrior was struggling to understand what he had just witnessed. They called it kindness, Thaxmer said quietly. What did you expect them to call it? Jack asked. Weakness, duty, obligation. Thaxmer turned away from the screen. Not kindness. War Prince Kralenth entered the bridge, his aide close behind. General, I have received a communication from the Federation Council. They are formally thanking the Zephyrian Empire for our assistance. The Federation Council? Thaxmer seemed surprised. They know it was our ships that delivered the supplies? Yes, and they have made an unusual request. They want to know if we would be willing to coordinate future humanitarian efforts together. Jack felt his heart racing. This was the moment he had been working toward, but it was also the most dangerous. If Thaxmer rejected the offer, it could mean the end of everything they had accomplished. Work together with the Federation? Thaxmer asked. As equals? As partners? Kraylanth replied. Using our combined strengths to help those who need it most. Thaxmer walked to the viewport, staring out at the ships of both fleets working side by side. Zephyrian cargo vessels moved alongside Federation. Medical ships, their crews cooperating to save lives instead of taking them. My father fought in 12 wars, Thaxmer said suddenly. He died believing that conquest was the only path to strength. I have spent my entire life following that path, and now? Jack asked gently. Now I see Zephyrian soldiers being thanked instead of feared. I see our ships bringing hope instead of death. Thaxmer's voice was heavy with emotion. Perhaps my father was wrong. Perhaps we have all been wrong. A new alarm sounded on the bridge. General, an officer reported, we're detecting incoming ships. Large formation, moving fast, Federation reinforcements? Kraylanth asked. No, sir, the ships are Zephyrian. It's Admiral Kexival's battle group. Jack felt his stomach drop. Admiral Kexival was known as one of the most aggressive commanders in the Zephyrian fleet. If he was coming here, it wasn't to help with humanitarian efforts. He must have heard about our mission, Thaxmer said grimly. Kexival believes even more strongly than I did that mercy is weakness. Can you stop him? Jack asked. I can try. But Kexival commands loyalty among the traditional warriors. If he calls for my removal from command, many will follow him. The incoming fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect military formation. 12 heavy cruisers led by Kexival's flagship Stormbreaker. They took position facing the humanitarian fleet, weapons powered but not yet targeting. Incoming transmission from Admiral Kexival, the communications officer announced. Put him through, Thaxmer ordered. The screen filled with the image of a scarred Zephyrian warrior whose eyes burned with fanatical intensity. Admiral Kexival was old even by Zephyrian standards, and every year had been spent in combat. General Thaxmer, you will withdraw your forces immediately and return to Zephyrian space. This humanitarian charade ends now. Admiral, Thaxmer replied carefully, we are conducting operations under direct orders from War Prince Kraylanth. Kraylanth has been corrupted by human weakness. I am here to restore proper Zephyrian values. Kexival's gaze shifted to Jack, starting with the execution of that human diplomat. You will not harm Ambassador Morrison, Kraylanth said, stepping into view of the transmission. He is under my personal protection. Your protection means nothing, Kraylanth. The High Command has lost faith in your leadership. Half the fleet admirals support my position. Jack realized that this was the moment that would determine everything. Not just his own life, but the future of both civilizations. He stepped forward knowing he was about to take the greatest risk of his career. Admiral Kexival, I request permission to speak. You request nothing, human. You will die for the corruption you have spread among our warriors. Then kill me, Jack said calmly. But first, answer one question. I do not answer to humans. Then answer to your own conscience. Look around you, Admiral. Look at what your people have accomplished here. For the first time in 1,000 years, other species celebrate the arrival of Zephyrian ships. Is that not a form of strength? It is weakness disguised as virtue. Jack activated his datapad one final time. This is a recording from yesterday. The leaders of 6 different species, all speaking about Zephyrian aid efforts. The display showed alien leaders praising Zephyrian courage and generosity. They spoke of Zephyrian soldiers working tirelessly to save lives, of Zephyrian ships bringing hope to the hopeless. They speak of strength, Admiral, not weakness. They see Zephyrian power being used to protect instead of destroy, and they call it magnificent. Kexival's expression didn't change, but Jack noticed something in the Admiral's eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. Furthermore, Jack continued, 3 species have formally requested to join a new alliance with the Zephyrian Empire, not as conquered subjects but as willing partners. They want to work with you because they've seen what you can accomplish when you choose to build instead of destroy. Lies, Kexival said, but his voice lacked conviction. Verify it yourself. Contact the Federation Council. Contact the species we've helped. Ask them what they think of Zephyrian strength now. For several minutes, both fleets hung in space, waiting for Kexival's response. Jack could see the internal struggle playing out on the Admiral's face. Everything he had believed for centuries was being challenged by the evidence before him. Finally, Kexival spoke. General Faxmer, report on the effectiveness of these humanitarian operations. Faxmer straightened. Admiral, in 3 days we have saved an estimated 50,000 lives. We have gained the gratitude of 6 species and the respect of the Federation Council. Our losses have been 0, and our strategic position has improved significantly. Improved how? Former enemies now see us as potential allies instead of inevitable conquerors. Intelligence gathering has increased dramatically, and we have gained access to medical and technological knowledge that we could never have obtained through conquest. Kexival was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different. War Prince Kralenth, I formally request to join this humanitarian mission. The bridge erupted in surprised murmurs. Even Kralenth seemed shocked by the Admiral's sudden change of heart. You are welcome to join us, Admiral, Kralenth replied. But I must ask what changed your mind. I have been fighting for 200 years, Kexival said slowly. I have conquered worlds and defeated armies. But I have never seen other species look at Zephyrian ships with hope instead of fear. If this is what strength truly looks like, then I want to be part of it. Jack felt tears forming in his eyes. Against all odds, against centuries of conditioning and tradition, the most warlike species in the galaxy was choosing a different path. Ambassador Morrison, Kexival continued, I owe you an apology and perhaps my life. You have shown us something we thought was impossible. What's that, Admiral? That there is more than one way to be strong? Over the following weeks, the transformation continued. More Zephyrian commanders joined the humanitarian efforts. Former enemies became partners in relief operations. The galaxy watched in amazement as the most feared military force in known space became its greatest source of hope. Jack Morrison returned to Earth a changed man. He had witnessed something that few believed possible, an entire civilization choosing to redefine its purpose. The Zephyrian Empire still existed, but it was no longer an empire of conquest. It had become an empire of protection. At a ceremony on New Geneva, President Helen Carter presented Jack with the highest honor Earth could bestow. But as he stood before the assembled crowd, Jack thought not of his own achievement, but of the Zephyrian soldiers now working alongside Federation crews to save lives across the galaxy. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack said in his acceptance speech, today we celebrate not the victory of one species over another, but the victory of hope over fear.